In the prologue, a scientist named Peter Wayland speaks to his newly created synthetic android robot. He asks the robot to play the tune and tells it, "I'm your father." He asks the android for its name and it chose the name David. David tells him, "You're my father because you are my creator, then who created you?" Wayland says it is a question of decades and nobody can find its answer. David says, "Father, maybe in future we can find your creator." In 2104, the Covenant ship is moving towards planet Orge 6. The ship contains 2,000 colonists and crew members and will reach its destination in 7 years. Another replica of David named Walter controls the ship under an AI mother's supervision. Walter asks the mother to open the solar panels to give more energy to the ship and checks the crew. While he is checking the embryos, the mother announces the neutrino burst detection and asks him for safety. Suddenly, the ship collides with the layer of the star's energy shield. It causes the ship to malfunction and Walter quickly awakens the crew members. In the panic, the captain's pod gets locked and catches fire. Daniels cries to see her husband dying. Orem throws the bodies outside and Daniels watches the videos of her husband and cries at her loss. Karina comes to Orem and says, "Now it's your crew," and Orem exhales saying, "Do you trust me?" Karina leaves and Orem comes to his team saying they faced a tragic incident. He thanks his team for accepting him as their captain and says, "We lost 47 colonists and 16 embryos. 83% of the ship's structure is fine," and Tennessee asks about the reason. Walter says from a nearby stellar ignition and Orem asks Walter to scan the complete ship. Orem orders his crew to fix the ship and Sergeant Lope says, "We lost 48 humans." Orem says, "I know, but if we don't make these repairs quickly we may face more threats." Daniels regains control and joins crew. She tells Orem that the terraforming module is stable, but the remaining vehicles are damaged. Walter says they need to repair the ship in 48 hours so they can leave this area as soon as possible. Walter and Daniels go to repair the vehicles and she tells Walter about Jake. She says Jake wants to build the cabin near the lake at Orge 6. Walter comforts her by saying that once you get there you must build a cabin by the lake in Jack's memory. After this, Tennessee, Walter, Ferris, and Daniels drink in Jack's memory. Orem smiles to see them and Daniels throws Jack's body into space. Orem says to Karina that they disobeyed my order because they don't trust me. Karina says she lost her husband and we lost our crew, so you have to give them some time. Orem still doesn't agree and Karina asks him to stay calm and says those people will become your neighbors after we reach our destination. Encore and Tennessee go out to fix the solar panel. They fix the panel that activates all the ship's functions and Orem welcomes Daniels. Before they leave, Tennessee is disturbed by the unknown wave and they ask him to come inside. Inside, checking his helmet, Walter says it's a ruse transmission, and Tennis' helmet picked it. Orem asks the mother to make it clear and after reorienting the audio, they hear an instrumental echo. Upworth says it's happening after every 46 seconds while Rick says maybe it's a sound of the ship. Tennessee repeats the sound and says it's John Denver's song. Walter asks the mother to check the signal's data and it shows that the signal is coming from the nearest solar system. Rix tells them this solar system contains 5 planets and one of them is in the habitat zone. This planet is much better than Orge 6 and Daniels says, "How did we miss the scan?" "We scanned the entire sector." Rick says we can reach there in 7 weeks and Orem becomes interested in landing. Upworth and the other crew members agree except Daniels. Daniels says to Orem that we've spent a decade searching life on Orge 6 and completed all our research, and now we are following a ruse transmission. Orem says maybe we just missed the planet, while Daniels tells him not to take the risk. Orem says nobody wants to sleep because they already saw the result, so first we will check the place and then decide to start a life there. Reaching the planet's orbit, they find a strong ionosphere and Orem asks his team for the landing. Rix tells him about the storm but Orem sets to leave with Ferris, Daniels, and the other crew members. They leave for the planet and the lander hits a storm, but after a few jolts, they reach the atmosphere. Ferris says, "I don't like the terrain," and they land the ship on the water. Tennis asks about the communication loss and Ferris tells him they landed safely but the lander is damaged. After taking the weapons and checking the atmosphere, the team touches the ground without safety masks. Orem leaves Ferris on the lander, moves ahead with the team and asks Walter about the signal's location, and Walter says it's coming from the west. While moving forward, they see a crop of wheat, seeing which they think that there must be a human settlement here. Ferris tries to activate the communication but fails and Tennis asks her to reboot the system and Ferris says it will take some hours. Karina and Ledward stay to take the samples of the soil and water while the rest continue moving. They see the felled trees and Orem says it could be the work of a huge machine. Karina starts to collect samples and Ledward goes for the piss. His foot comes upon an egg-like object from which some spore comes out and goes into his ear. On the other hand, the group sees a huge abandoned ship which makes them more nervous. They go inside the ship and Tom sees the same eggs and touches them. The spore goes into his nose. Daniels finds Dr. Shaw's locket and a photo. Touching the ship, they find the signal source, a tape playing by the energy shield with a hologram. Ledward becomes sick and Karina tells Orm about the situation, saying they are heading back to the lander. The crew starts to leave and Tom also falls due to the sickness. Ledward's mouth begins to bleed, and seeing this, Ferris asks Karina to take him to the medical bay. Inside the bay, Ferris sees his body is ripping and rushes out, locking Karina inside. Tom also becomes too sick and Ferris tearfully tells Tennessee that things are getting weird with Ledward. Karina asks Ferris to take her out, but she refuses. Ledward's body explodes and a neomorph emerges from within. The neomorph attacks Karina, and as Ferris attempts to shoot it, she slips and falls. She manages to escape, but shooting the creature damages the lander. The lander explodes, killing both women inside while the crew watches the scene. Neomorph escapes to the planet's surface while another such creature bursts from Tom's throat, killing him. On the ship, Tennessee wants to land the ship, but Upworth tells him the storm has risen and doing so will destroy the ship. Tennessee doesn't want to listen to her thoughts, but she asks him to wait until they make any communication. On the ground, a neomorph attacks and eats Walter's arm and kills a crew member. The attack is too fast, but they manage to kill it. Another neomorph attacks Rosenthal, but fortunately, the group is saved by Walter's replica David. Orm is crying to see the burning lander and Daniels asks him to leave the place. David leads them to his place where they see human statues all over the ground, like everyone has frozen in place, and they are worried by the sight. Inside, they ask David about the planet and he explains that 10 years ago, Dr. Shaw and I arrived here. When the Prometheus crashed here, their engineer ship accidentally released a black liquid bio-weapon which killed the native population, and Shaw died when the ship crashed in the ensuing chaos. After the crew members tell David of their mission, they attempt to radio the Covenant for help, but the surviving neomorph infiltrates the city and finds Rosenthal alone before decapitating her. David tries to communicate with the creature and is horrified when Orm kills it. Under Orm's gunpoint, David reveals that the aliens are a result of his experimenting with the black liquid as a catalyst to create a new species. He leads Orm to an incubation chamber and tricks him into being embraced by a facehugger, which implants Orm with an embryo. A xenomorph soon erupts from Orm's chest, killing him. As the others search for Orm and Rosenthal, Walter confronts David after realizing that David had deliberately unleashed the black liquid upon the engineers. David explains that he believes humans are an inferior species and should not be allowed to colonize the galaxy. When Walter disagrees, David disables him and captures Daniels, revealing to her that he also murdered Shaw and used her corpse for his experiments. Walter reactivates himself and engages David, allowing Daniels to escape while Lope is attacked by the facehugger. Cole saves Lope before they are ambushed by the now mature xenomorph, which kills Cole. Tennessee arrives in another lander to extract Daniels, Lope, and the seemingly victorious Walter. They kill the xenomorph before docking with the Covenant. However, Lope had been implanted with another xenomorph, which bursts from his chest on the ship before quickly maturing and killing crew members Rix and Upworth. With Walter's help, Tennessee and Daniels corner the creature in the Covenant's airlock and flush it into space. The Covenant resumes its trip to Origay 6, and the surviving crew re-enters stasis. As Walter puts Daniels under, she realizes that he is actually David, but is unable to escape her stasis pod before falling asleep. Now in control of both the ship and its population, David regurgitates 2 alien embryos and places them in cold storage alongside the human embryos. He then uses Walter's name to record a log stating that all crew members except Daniels and Tennessee were killed by the neutrino blast at the beginning of the film. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing videos.